All right, welcome back to Sports in American History. We're going to talk about sports in early America today. And to start off, though, with our starter question, I want you to think about if you were in North America, what would your favorite sport be in the following time periods? 1000 AD, so basically we're talking about before Columbus, 1650 AD, this is after the English came to North America, and 1800 AD, this would be after the United States was an independent nation. So go ahead and write down what you think the sports would. And you don't get to invent basketball or any other sport before its time. So what I'm looking for is how much do you know about what sports were played during these time periods. So if you don't know, take a guess, but that's what I'm looking for. If you're doing this online, pause right now, scribble down your answers into the Google Doc. Sports in early American notes that accompany this, and then unpause it and continue on. All right. Continuing on. So, here we go. Sports in early America. The natives we're going to talk about two specific sports that the natives had that were very significant. One of the coolest was the Mayan ball game. It was played by rubber ball, about the size of a cantaloupe, and you could hit it with your hips, your elbow, or your knee. Sound familiar? Sound a little bit like soccer? Yeah, maybe. You can hit soccer ball, obviously, with lots of other places, but the limitation aspect of it sounds very similar to the limited aspect of what you can and cannot use to hit the soccer ball with. Similar to that of the ball game played in the Mayan cultures of Central America. Rules, of course, varied over the year because it was played over several centuries, but generally it's played on a slanted court, two slanted courts, and then teams of 2 to 6 players played. The goal, of course, was to get the ball through the metal ring, the ring, not the metal ring, but the stone ring hanging there, that before it hit the ground in between the two courts. And if it did hit the ground, then it passed to the other team and they got to do it. Sometimes it was played to the death. In other words, and I never got a clear idea of this because what I went to, during my honeymoon, we went to Cancun. We saw at Chichen Itza, we saw the Mayan ball court, and the tour guide there told me, and I don't believe it's true, but this is what he told me. He said that the two teams would play, and the winning team, at least the captain of the winning team, was ritually sacrificed. And I was like, yeah, that would make me want to not win several games. It would be a very low-scoring affair, as I try to avoid scoring because I'm not so much fond of having my head lopped off. Other people have said that it's probably more like the losing team was sacrificed. Either way, sometimes this was played to the death, so it was pretty heavy, And on this next slide, I have a video recreation of it. Moving on. Sports in early America. Lacrosse was also a huge sport. Obviously, it's very influential because we play it here even to this day. Lacrosse was also called the Little War or Creator's Game. It was played on fields that could stretch for miles and over the course of several days, often used to resolve conflicts and disputes. There weren't a lot of rules in this game, and Injuries were common. Sometimes these injuries were severe. In other words, if the dude was in your way and your stick happened to, whack him in the leg and break his leg, yeah, it's part of the rule, part of the way it goes. It was called lacrosse because the French, who were the first Europeans to witness it, were the ones that named it, and um, that they just named it after a version of field hockey that they had seen. It was similar, played in Europe. This was very common across all of the Eastern Woodlands Natives tribes. I know a lot of people say it's an Iroquois or the Haudenosaunee tribe that did it. I don't even know if they were the ones to invent it. They were the ones that the French saw playing it first, but that is not to say that they were the ones that played it first, because even by that time, it was played all over the Eastern Woodlands, the Shawnee, the Cherokee, the Creeks. In fact, in your textbook, you have, I believe it is an excerpt from a guy who watched the Creeks play it, and the Creeks are in northern Alabama, okay, so they're way far away from where the French would have seen this in Canada. So it had spread out, and it was quite influential across a wide span of native tribes in North America. And obviously it's very influential today. We have lacrosse in colleges all over, especially in the Northeast. So I have a YouTube link for that one as well. I will cut that video out and put that in there as well.
This afternoon we're going to have an exhibition of Canada's national summer sport, lacrosse. And actually lacrosse is the incorrect name for it. It's actually called the Creator's Game. And the Creator's Game depicts its divine origin. We're very glad to be welcomed here so we can share our culture. And by sharing our culture, we share peace. It's getting kind of intense. Oh, there you go, another one. Again, it's your body. There's the body again, body contact. All right, there it is. Oh, he's down. At that time, to take a little bit of a break, they're respectful. He got hurt, okay? I think he's gonna be all right. They see the entertainment. There it is. There it is. 7th goal. The Bears got the winning goal. And so when they come over to the presents, the gifts that they bet, they would come and pick up their gifts and their bet. And that's what they won. The losers over here they lost their bet. Okay? And all they can do is go home and try again next year.
All right. Sports in early America. There was a morality aspect to sports, especially in the North. And the Puritan influenced societies of the North, they had a strong moral aspect to it. And for them, many of them saw sports as a waste of time. Now, this was a point of conflict even within the Puritan communities, because many of them saw the value of sports for exercise and for entertainment. But it was also seen as somewhat of a waste of time, and if it was a waste of time, then it's not a good use of our resources as Christians. So we should be focused on, Christian things. So there was this thing, and especially for women, the playing of sports could be seen as very detrimental to not only your social life, but your spiritual life as well. So, we have this 12-step downfall outlined in the American Christian Review as late as 1878. This is the thing that really kills me. This is 1878. This is like hundreds of years after the founding of Puritan New England, and then we still have this idea that if women are involved in sports, they are going to hell in a handbasket. So it starts off with a social party, and then a social and play party where croquet is involved, and then we have picnic and croquet, and then picnic, croquet, and dancing. Oh my gosh. I'm not really sure how dancing gets involved in croquet. I don't know if any of you have played croquet, but there's not a lot of dancing that I've ever had in croquet. I mean, unless you really, I don't know, send somebody's ball flying clear out into the weeds and then you do a little ha ha screw you dance, but whatever. So obviously, this picnic, croquet, and dancing leads to absence from church! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! I mean, because obviously it does. You can obviously see how there's a one-to-one correlation, and if you obviously can't pick up on the sarcasm in my voice, yeah, I'm not seeing it. I don't know how. I guess croquet is so addicting that we have to play it when we're supposed to be in church. And so, God in heaven help us. So, obviously, if we're out of church, there's this imprudent or immoral conduct, which actually that kind of makes sense. I mean, hey, if you're not showing up in church, then you're obviously a mean, horrible person. And then, of course, the church is excluding you from church because you are a mean, imprudent, or immoral person. Um, Pardon me, but maybe I'm getting something wrong here. My thought is that the church is supposed to be there for people who are imprudent or immoral and help them to be better. So excluding them from the church kind of is counterproductive, but whatever. What do I know? These people in 1878 obviously know more about how sports is the downfall of society than I do. And then, of course, we have a runaway match, which basically means that you're going to go get eloped with some, you know, roguish man or something. And then, of course, poverty and discontent, because if you're running away with a rogue or a pirate or God knows whoever, obviously there's going to be poverty and discontent, and horrible things happen to you because you ran away with a guy that you met at a croquet party. What idiot does that? Shame and disgrace, and then finally ruin, which I'm not sure why ruin. Shame and disgrace is pretty bad, so ruin is worse than that. I mean, you're already poor, you're already discontent, you're shamed and disgraced, so what's ruining beyond that? I mean, what, do you get cancer and die, or you run over by a horseless carriage, or your family drowned in some freak fishing accident? I don't know. Anyway, so that's what it is, the 12-step downfall of sports for women. Sorry ladies, but don't ever go to a croquet party because you're screwed if you do. Just saying. I mean, it's facts right there. American Christian Review. All right, moving on. Sports in class. Obviously, there were some sports that were associated with various classes of people. Rat baiting in the urban poor was very commonly associated. Of course, that's what you're going to do if you're urban and you're poor and you have a lot of rats. You're going to, I don't know, try to make money off it. So I don't know if any of you read the book, but if you don't know what rat baiting is, basically you take 100 rats, which evidently in the urban societies like New York, it's pretty easy to find 100 rats. I can't find one. I don't think I've ever seen one outside of one of those tame white rats they have in the pet shops, but the ones you feed to snakes and whatnot. But anyway, rats in New York, evidently a big thing, and so they would take 100 rats and they would dump them in a 8-foot long, like an 8-foot by 6-foot or 4-foot long pit, and then they would drop a dog in there, usually like a rat terrier or something like that, which is where the rat terrier comes from killing all these rats. They were bred basically to kill these things. So basically, you have your dog, and you throw your dog in the rat pit, and you time how many rats that dog kills in like whatever time, a minute, 5 minutes, whatever it takes. I don't know. And then I guess it's like an over and under on the betting. I bet my boy can kill 50 rats in a minute or something like that, and then place your bets, blah blah blah, and everybody goes home rich or broke or whatever. And then get 100 more rats and throw another dog in there. It keeps going like that. Occasionally the dogs got the sour end of that one, but 99 times out of 100 it was the rats that got the bad end of that deal. So yeah, but that's what the urban poor did. Why? Because it doesn't take a lot to find 100 rats in New York City, and it doesn't take a lot to find a place to dump them and throw a dog in. And that was considered great sport for the urban poor. Horse racing with the rich in both the North and the South. Horse racing, of course, was rich. Why? Because horse racing has a very high threshold for entry. In other words, you have to be pretty rich to afford a horse, to afford a trainer, to afford a stable, to afford a saddle, to afford to pay a jockey, etc. Just the whole sport of horse racing is expensive from top to bottom. I mean, I don't know if some of you have probably owned horses and you know a lot more than I do that horses are insanely expensive animals to maintain. Okay? So the horse racing was a sport that basically was one that the rich people hung out in. Other sports sometimes allowed for a mixing of classes or even race mixing. For instance, boxing, both North and South. Boxing was one of those sports that it didn't really matter how poor or rich you were, it mattered how hard you could hit. And if you were strong enough and you could punch someone, it didn't really matter what class you came from. Throw him in a ring and let's see if he can beat up the other guy. And by the way, the rest of us are just going to place our bets on the side. Don't worry about the two bloody guys in the ring. And we're talking about first boxing. I don't know how much you guys know about boxing, but boxing, when it was originally started, it was bare knuckle, no pads, no nothing. Okay, bare knuckle boxing. So yeah, you can imagine the broken fingers, knuckles, hands, etc. that involved in that if you punch somebody square in the jaw or on the side of the head. Which is why most people didn't punch people in the head at that time. They punched people in. They beat them to death in their body. I mean, you basically hit people in their kidneys, in their gut, in their chest, shoulders, everything, anywhere and everywhere you could legally get a hit in. And the rounds would last. Oh my gosh, we're talking about some of these matches were 100 rounds long. I mean, boxers today slug it out, and if they go 15 rounds, and these are 15 2-minute rounds with about 30-second break in between, these guys are exhausted after 15 rounds. Could you imagine going toe to toe with a guy bare knuckle for over 100 rounds? And and by the way, the original rounds, they didn't stop until somebody hit the floor. Okay, so the first round might go 15 minutes. Okay, the second round might go 20 more. Eventually, though, they're going to start getting tired, and even simple things are going to knock them over, or they're going to trip over their own feet because they're so tired, and so rounds start to get a lot shorter towards the end. But we're talking about endurance matches for these boxing situations. Another one was cockfighting. Cockfighting was one of those weird things. You would think it would be a lot like rat baiting in the North, but cockfighting was a lot more. It was seen, oddly enough, as a lot more highbrow. Basically, you're breeding this rooster to kill other roosters. Well, roosters naturally want to kill other roosters. That's what they do. And so they would breed these roosters to be hyper aggressive, to jump up high, to come down on top and spur their opponent. And the way a rooster will attack and kill its opponent, it has a little spur on the back of its, like a sharp claw on the back of its foot. Well, they would basically attach, sharpened razor blades on the top of these things to make it that much easier. And so they would take these roosters and then throw them in a pit, and basically, one rooster comes out alive. So basically, these two roosters fight to the death. My rooster fights your rooster, and you see these guys jumping up, all that stuff, coming down, slashing on each other, and eventually one of them dies. And the winning rooster, yay, they get their money. The losing rooster, he's dead, and his guy lost his money. But it was a great time. Well, it was generally seen as a sport of anyone who could breed the best rooster. Poor, black, white, didn't matter. Oftentimes, slaves handled the roosters for their masters in the early South. But if you were a free black, there were occasions where you would come in and participate. And there were, side bettings too. There were main events, and then there were side events and stuff like that. So there were all kinds of opportunities. I'm not going to say that ended well all the time for uh, the former slaves, or the slaves or former slaves. But it didn't necessarily end well for the poor either, because rich people didn't like getting beat. If they got beat, oftentimes they found a way to take it out on you in some other way. Okay. Um, that's all I have right now for sports in early America. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the purpose of sports, and that's all for today, and that's where we're going for tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it.